AITA for taking my son to church against my ex-husband's wishes. So this involves myself, 38 female, my husband, 27, my son, 7, and my ex-husband, 35. Basically the situation is that I have primary custody of my son as my ex travels a lot for work. My current husband is very religious and is very active in his church. I'm not that religious, but I always participated in that part of his life to support him. My ex is strictly anti-religious to the point of anger about it. He was brought up religious, but became this way because of church-related trauma he experienced as a kid. When my current husband moved in with us a month ago, he wanted my son to come to church with us. At first I refused because I know my ex would have a fit about it, so until last week we organized for a babysitter or for him to be with his friends when we went. Last week though my son expressed interest in wanting to go, so I decided that he could because he wanted to, but I knew that if I told my ex about it, he would talk him out of it, so I didn't tell him. We all went and had a good time, my son especially as far as I could tell, but I think a lot of this had to do with playing with the other kids after the service and less to do with the service itself. After seeing that he enjoyed it, I asked him if he wanted to go again, and he said he did, so I brought it up with my ex and all hell broke loose. He's accused me of letting my current husband indoctrinate our son and said that I had overstepped my bounds as a parent because religious participation is something both parents have to agree on. I do agree with him when it comes to it being a decision we both agree on. That was why I was so hesitant of letting him get involved. But I disagree strongly in the first accusation, my husband indoctrinating him, because he just isn't. But I don't blame my ex for thinking that way because of his experience with it. That said, I don't think that me letting my son go to church one time because he asked is as heinous as my ex thinks it is. So I'm seeking outside opinion. AITA, your son is 7. He doesn't organically have an interest in religion. He has an interest in being around his mom. Churches are not as innocuous for children as you seem to think. As an adult, you can rationalize away the incoherence in even mainstream Christianity. It's more difficult for children. For example, the lesson of King Solomon is used in Sunday school as well as Isaac. The concept of original sin is taught in Sunday school. As a non-religious person, are you really comfortable having people teach your 7-year-old that he was born sinful? Are you comfortable with him learning that God's love sometimes means being willing to kill someone on his instructions? These are powerful moral lessons that adults grapple with. I think you are dismissive of his father's legitimate concerns. Honestly, NTA, and your ex sounds controlling. I think the majority of YTA here come from people that are biased against religion to begin with. But replace church with Boy Scouts or another regular group activity and you get a different response. Decisions both parents have to agree on have to do with medical/school/out of state travel. You can theoretically agree to not make decision about religion, but that would have to be written down in your court order. What you do with your son in your own time, within reason, is your business. Especially when the child wants to go with you guys. You went out of your way to accommodate your ex's request, but he doesn't get to make unilateral decisions during your parenting time. I've seen the other side of this. A few years ago my stepdaughter's mom found out we were doing a certain activity on church day, which she didn't think was appropriate. She is very conservative. Now we call her bullshit because their marriage ended due to her cheating, so we know deep down she is only conservative when it's convenient for her. She called my husband and raised up a storm about us going out and even made my stepdaughter, who until that point was super excited about our activity, cry and say she didn't want to go. We were very upset because this was my husband's custody time and his ex liked throwing these little tantrums just so she could keep a certain level of control of what we all did when it was our time with the kid. We never interfered with her custody time, even though there were definitely things we didn't agree with from time to time. We went anyway, had a great time, and that was the end of it. Gonna get downvoted for this, but I don't care. If your child enjoys participating in religious activities, then let him, but I think you should sit down and talk with your ex and explain your child's liking to participating in church and going. Your ex needs to not push his past trauma on his child, because everyone goes through the ways of life differently. In my opinion, I would talk to X about it first and made an agreement to not force child to participate in anything they don't like at church. Okay, I'm going to get downvoted for this, but now you can let your son come to church if he asks to go. That's not the same thing as forcing him to embrace religion. His father had a right to be consulted, but it's not singularly his decision whether his son is allowed to go or not. He gets plenty of anti-religion from his dad. It's okay to introduce other ways of thinking. Your son can decide for himself whether religion is right for him as he grows and becomes who he is supposed to be. Just don't let your new husband throw too much at him. For anyone reading, I'm not even a little bit religious. I do not support Christianity or any form of organized religion. I just think people should be given information and allowed to decide what works best for themselves. AITA for joking about my friend's dead grandmother. A few months back my friend got to meet my family for the first time, and he was playing with my dog while I got ready down the hall. A week or two later he pulls up pictures of my dog, showing them to the rest of my friend group, and is laughing and joking about how fat my dog is. I don't know why, but it really struck a chord with me, and I asked him to stop, in a sincere tone explaining that she has a form of bone cancer and it's hard for her to be active sometimes. He agreed to stop and apologized. Not even a month later he calls my dog a fat bitch and started laughing hysterically. I took it upon myself to say, "Isn't your grandmother literally dead?" And he said no, so I replied, "Let me know when she dies so I can pop a squat over her headstone." He was furious and began berating me about how I don't respect people's loved ones and how he doesn't want to be friends with me anymore. I do feel bad for lashing out at him like that, and I feel like I could have handled that in a better way. Also, a part of me feels like he got what he deserved. AITA? I get why you're upset, but you went way overboard and dragged his grandmother into it. IDK, why you all are even friends. You don't even act like you like each other. Honestly, you both sound kind of insufferable. NTA. He was asked politely to stop and he didn't. You're like me. If people don't respect what you ask of them, especially when they say they will, then you end the argument. He got what he deserved for being an R. Don't feel bad. A friend like that isn't worth staying friends with. You both are tar. The correct response would have been to ask him to leave, not start talking about what you're going to do when someone dies. That's extreme, and honestly a lot more messed up than calling a dog fat. I'm not saying your friend wasn't a jerk, he was. I get you're sensitive because your dog has cancer, but you basically took his level 4 attack and challenged him with a 7. AITA for inviting my mom to see my week-old son. Hi, I'm 34 male. My wife, 30 female, recently gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. He is the first kid in many years in my family and everyone was really excited about his birth, especially my mother. She wanted to be there in the delivery room with us, but my wife said no, so I respected her wishes. I said she can meet him when we get home, and my wife agreed. Well, there were some complications in the birth and my wife was clearly exhausted. In her exhaustion she told me that maybe my mother waiting at the house isn't a good idea and can I ask her to come after a couple of weeks. I was shocked and hurt. My mother loves my wife and here my wife was trying to intentionally hurt my mother. But seeing her in pain I couldn't say no and called my mother. She was very upset. Well, a week goes by without any events. I asked my wife again and again when can my mom come, but she told me to wait. Yesterday my wife went to a doctor's appointment and I was in charge of taking care of my son. Suddenly I got an idea and called my mother who lives nearby. She came and met my son. The happiness that I saw on her face was amazing. It was an emotional moment for me when she held him for the first time. Well, she was just getting ready to leave, but then my wife arrived. She got very angry very fast. She didn't say anything to my mother, but I could see in her face that there was some rant coming. My mother left, and my wife exploded. I have never seen her this angry. She told me if she didn't even invite her own mother then I should understand that there was a reason. She was especially upset about me doing this behind her back. I said I'm sorry multiple times, but she is still angry. I slept in the guest room yesterday. I don't think I did anything a good son wouldn't do, but I do feel bad about hurting my wife. AITA? Info. Did you stop to think that maybe your wife wanted to be there when your mom met her grandchild? Did you stop to think maybe that's why she's upset? Because you rushed it and did it behind her back. She just gave birth, isn't up for visitors, and wanted you to wait to have anyone over, but you did it anyway. I have had 2 kids. I'm due with number 3 next month. Let me tell you how I felt afterwards. I felt like I had been hit by a semi-truck. Everything hurt. I was swollen all over. I had the most impressive cankles from the swelling. My breasts were leaking. I still was bleeding, like there was no tomorrow, so my pads were gigantic and thick. Everything was sore. And afterwards, you can't wipe after you pee. You have to spray yourself off with a bottle and pat yourself dry. I also ended up running fevers within a couple days of getting home with each kid. I'm not talking 99.8 degree low grade fevers. I'm talking 102 degree fevers, where I was shaking, and even more itchy than I already was. I love my mother-in-law, but do I want her around when I'm still feeling like that? Hell no. I barely want my husband around when I'm feeling like that. Yet, I still have to continue to do things around the house, take care of the baby and other kids as well as the dog. I have to do that while sore, sleep deprived, and bleeding like a broken dam. Your wife. That's what she has been dealing with, minus the other kids and possibly animals. And that doesn't even touch on the emotional side of things, since her hormones are all out of whack. Add to that, there were complications, and you still haven't taken a minute to think about your wife and how she is handling being a new mom. You are only thinking about yourself and how you can be a good son. Grow up. You don't need to be a good son anymore. You don't get to think about yourself first anymore. You have a family. Your priority is your wife and child. You need to put them first. Your mother and your feelings are no longer top priority. You're the asshole. NTA. WTF does your wife want? Either she gives you a reason for not wanting other people interacting with the kid, or she just needs to FCK off. It's your baby too. You two get to decide who visits him. You respected your wife's wishes of not being disturbed. You don't owe her more than that. Yeah, you could have let her know you were calling your mother, but it's not like you needed to ask for her permission. Yes, exactly. I don't know what's wrong with everyone. I did everything to make my wife feel happy, but I have obligations to my mother as well. I wanted to share this happiness with her. Update made by OP a little later. My wife kicked me out, and I'm living with my mother. I hope you all are happy now. You separated me from my wife and child. She saw this stupid post. This doggo wants you to subscribe. Subscribe for the good doggo.